The history of humankind still offers many unexplained moments. New scientific findings make experts and people with an interest in the origin of life on Earth sit up and take notice, as they broaden our perspective on the knowledge and abilities of our ancestors and, in some cases, open up completely new perspectives and ways of seeing things. Are you fascinated by mysterious things and archaeological discoveries? Then show us with a thumbs up, subscribe to Hidden Worlds, and join us on our journey. Oldest proof of life. The oldest evidence of life on Earth has been found in 3.95 billion-year-old rocks from Labrador in Canada. The rocks date back to the Eoarchean era, 4 to 3.6 billion years ago. During this time, our Earth had only a rudimentary atmosphere and oceans from which the first evidence of life emerged. Until now, researchers have based their theories about the origin of life on Earth on 3.7 billion-year-old rocks found in Greenland in 2016. The find in Labrador is 3.95 billion years old, 200 million years older than any other find. Geologists from the University of Tokyo stated that the materials found were created by microbes. The scientists focused their investigations on the detection of graphite, as previous research has shown that evidence of life is possible in graphite, which accumulates to form carbon isotopes. The carbon isotopes from the Labrador rock suggest that they were formed naturally and not contaminated over time. Future research will aim to analyze the composition of the graphite and accompanying minerals to identify these ancient organisms and gain new insights into the origin of life on Earth. The mystery of a human clay head. A 2,100-year-old human clay head has fascinated Russian archaeologists since its discovery. Found among the graves of cremated humans in Khakassia in 1968, it immediately caught the eye of archaeologists when they examined the Shestakovsky burial mound. The clay head shows the likeness of a young man who was probably a warrior. Initial X-rays of the skull in 1971 revealed skull bones inside it that were much smaller than the clay head itself. At the time, further investigation would only have been possible by opening the clay skull, which would have meant its destruction. It took almost 4 decades for scientists to turn their attention again to this relic of the Tagar culture, which is known above all for its elaborate burial ceremonies. It was not uncommon for cremations to take place with more than 200 dead who were cremated together. The investigations led to the conclusion that the clay head does not contain the skull of a human being, but that of a sheep. The scientists suspect that the people of Tagar culture buried the dead in this unusual way because the body of the man was not found. Thus, entry into the afterlife was nevertheless ensured. Archaeologists know of several of these tombs called cenotaphs, in which an animal was buried as a symbolic substitute for the missing body of the dead man. Tel Caramel. Tel Caramel is a Neolithic settlement mound in Syria near the Kuwait River. It's located 25 kilometers north of Aleppo and 65 kilometers south of the Taurus Mountains and raises 444 meters above sea level at its highest point. The first signs of life found at the site date back to 12,000 BC. The defensive structure discovered at Tel Caramel comprises of a total of 5 towers, one of which was built around 10,650 BC and is thus older than the Tower of Jericho. Closer investigations in 2006 discovered that the walls of the towers were half a meter to a meter thick and that individual structures were built several times in the same place. This suggests that the structure was partially rebuilt through destruction. The discovery of a 2 to 3 centimeter thick layer of charcoal found in and around the tower supports this theory and testifies to fire damage. Not far from the site are round residential structures that were partially sunk into the ground. Scattered throughout the settlement were stone cooking areas with pits meant for storing supplies. In the area, the archaeologists found a clay figurine in the shape of a bird, in addition to equipment for making arrows and pictorial representations of humans and snakes. 12 graves with the remains of 20 adults, some of whom were missing their skulls, were also discovered at Tel Caramel. In some cases, only the skulls were buried. For burials in this era, it was customary to consign the body to the ground, but to bury the skull elsewhere in the house. Cave of Lascaux. The Cave of Lascaux, with its cave paintings, which are classified as Franco-Cantabrian cave art, has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1979. The cave was discovered by 4 men on 12th of September 1940, and in the same year, the first scientific paper was published that placed the origin of the cave paintings in the Perigordian period. The age of the finds falls within the period from 36,000 to 19,000 BC. In the following years, the artworks were catalogued and more than 1,400 copies were made before the cave was opened to the public in 1948. The cave paintings range from incised drawings to artistic drawings in which different colours were used. The colour remains were examined with an electron microscope, and the results confirmed the theory that the colours correspond to manganese and iron oxides from the surrounding area. In addition to the cave paintings, there were also numerous archaeological finds. Jewelry, tools, and also stone artifacts were found during excavations. Altamira Cave. Just like the Lascaux Cave, the Spanish Altamira Cave is on the UNESCO World Heritage List and was discovered in 1868. Inside, there are around 930 images from the Paleolithic period, ranging from incised drawings to charcoal drawings and coloured images. Among other things, the cave contains portraits of deer, horses, and bison. The colours were applied with a feather or simply by hand. The cave was used between 33,600 and 11,000 BC until the cave entrance collapsed. The cave has not been open to the public since 1978. The cave paintings began to mould due to the warm breath of the tourists and the attached wooden railings. Murujuga. Murujuga is another name of the Burrup Peninsula in Western Australia. On the 27-kilometre long and 5-kilometre wide peninsula, there are 600,000 to 1 million petroglyphs made by Aborigines. These so-called petroglyphs are estimated to be up to 30,000 years old and show images of partly extinct animals such as the Tasmanian devil, as well as emus, kangaroos, and thousands of mythological signs of the indigenous people of Australia. The Burrup Peninsula has been classified as one of the 100 most endangered monuments in the world by the World Monuments Fund since 2003. The petroglyphs have been listed among the 10 most endangered historic places since 2007. They have been partially protected by the Murujuga National Park since 2013, after about 25% of the petroglyphs had already been destroyed by industrialization. Theopetra Cave. The Theopetra Cave is located in Thessaly, Greece, on the northeastern side of a limestone formation. Traces in the sedimentary layers in the 500-square-metre cave show that it was inhabited starting from the Middle Paleolithic through the Upper Paleolithic, Middle Stone Age, and Neolithic periods. Organic material found in the cave could be dated by radiocarbon examination and shows the presence of humans in the cave about 46,330 years ago. Neolithic spirit masks. For the first time, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem is presenting 9,000-year-old Neolithic spirit masks. They were found in the Judean desert and are an eerie sight with their empty eyes and open mouths. The exhibition includes 12 limestone masks from the Neolithic period, all weighing 1 to 2 kilograms and all unique. Some of the masks appear to depict older people and some masks appear younger. They may have been intended to honor ancestors as part of a Stone Age religion. There remains much room for speculation, as these 12 Neolithic spirit masks are at least 3,500 years older than the earliest known writing. Areni 1 shoe. The Areni 1 shoe was made of leather and found in 2008 in excellent condition in the Areni 1 cave in the Vayotzor province of Armenia. The shoe was discovered under a layer of sheep dung and was perfectly preserved by the dry and cool climate in the region. The condition is even so good that the laces are still preserved. It consists of a single piece of leather, is about 5,500 years old, and thus several centuries older than the shoes of the glacier mummy Ötzi. The material was examined by 2 independent laboratories, which dated the age to 3,500 BC. With a length of 24.5 centimeters and a width of 10 centimeters, the dimensions of the footwear correspond roughly to a size 37. It's unclear whether it was worn by a woman or a man, as men were considerably smaller at the time, and the shoe could therefore also have fitted them. The footwear was made from the skin of a pig or a cow. 70,000-year-old bracelet. The bracelet was found in 2008 in the world-famous Denisova cave in the Altai region of Siberia. The age of the arm jewelry was estimated to be between 40,000 and 50,000 years old and was therefore not made by Homo sapiens but by the extinct species of Denisova people. New findings suggest that the jewelry could even be 65 to 70,000 years old. Clear evidence for this theory is not yet available. However, it is a fact that it's indescribably beautiful. During the day, it reflects the sun's rays, and at night, by the fire, it casts a deep green shadow. Since time immemorial, people have built mysterious buildings whose significance we can only guess at today. Huge buildings that should not exist have been created by humans since the beginning of time. Often they are sacrificial cities or holy and powerful places that are discovered by archaeologists. But also ancient phenomena created by nature itself can be observed again and again, where one cannot believe one's own eyes, and yet they exist. Mitla mosaics. In the Mexican state of Oaxaca, there is a very special architectural feature to see, the Mitla mosaics. Mitla was probably settled as early as 500 BC and was inhabited by the Zapotec people, who called themselves the Cloud People. The former palace city is rich in magnificent buildings that are a veritable treasure trove for archaeologists and scientists from all over the world. The Zapotec covered selected buildings with a peculiar wall decoration that is unparalleled. Thousands upon thousands of precisely hewn stone tiles form huge graphic ornamental walls. Jagged lines sweep across the walls in a very specific pattern as far as the eye can see. To this day, it's unclear what the Cloud People intended with these ornaments. Theories range from ominous powers to encrypted codes to profane wall decoration, which can probably never be conclusively confirmed. But the visual effect of the ornaments is undisputed. If you stand in a room decorated with these tiles, the sight can send a shiver down your spine. Greek dragon houses. In 1797, explorers climbed Mount Ochi on the Greek island of Euboea. What they found there, none of them could have foreseen. Over 20 rectangular buildings built of enormous stone slabs were discovered by the explorers scattered over the south of the island. Ancient ruins, some of them well preserved, others only existing in a few chunks. These ruins are surrounded by inconceivable myths and mysteries that still occupy researchers today. Were these really the dwellings of dragons, superhuman beings with powers we can only guess at today? Or were they early temples used for sacrifices and religious rituals? Scientists' opinions differ widely here, ranging as far as the theory of shelters used in summer for shepherds who herded their animals up here. A lack of historical sources prevents this mystery about the dragon houses from ever being revealed, and the mountains of the island of Euboea do not reveal the solution to the riddle. Oklahoma runestones. In North America, more precisely in Runestone Park in Oklahoma, there is a small archaeological sensation that has baffled scientists since its discovery. It concerns runes that have been carved into an enormous boulder. The characters can be attributed to the runes of the Vikings. According to some sources, their origin dates back to around 900 to 1100 AD, and that is precisely the point. Northmen who arrived in what is now Oklahoma before Christopher Columbus discovered America and left their writing there? Oklahoma is over 600 miles from the coast. What were the Vikings doing there? How did they get to America? Are there other unknown traces? The most likely translation of the characters is Valley of the Gnomes. What is behind this message? The runes have kept their secret. Mysterious Stone. Roanoke, a settler town in North Carolina, was founded in 1585. In 1590, the settlement was found abandoned, and there was no trace of the 118 settlers. Carved into a tree, evidence was found that the settlers had possibly fled to an island inhabited by Indians. But from what? And why were there no traces, neither of their disappearance nor of their whereabouts? A huge question mark hovers over the lost colony of Roanoke. But even more mysterious is a find that a traveler discovered in 1973, the so-called Dare Stone. It's a stone with a story carved into it, the story of Eleanor Dare, settler in Roanoke and daughter of Governor John White. The stone tells the story of a battle with Indians, in which the child Eleanor had given birth to was named among many other victims. In the course of time, several more death stones appeared and told the story to its end, concluding with Eleanor's death. Whether the stones are authentic or not, the story of the lost colony is deeply moving and enigmatic. Kumakivi. There are many things that are so improbable that you can't believe them until you see them with your own eyes. Kumakivi is definitely one of those things. To see it, you have to travel to the Finnish forests. That's where the Kunakivi, the strange stone, as its name translates, is enthroned. And strange it is indeed. The enormous boulder balances on another rounded boulder that rests on the ground. The point of contact between the boulders is, compared to the boulder themselves, downright tiny. But even though it looks as if it would take no more than a snap of the fingers to topple the boulder, it does not move the slightest millimeter. According to legend, the gigantic stone was thrown there by giant trolls who have lived in the forest since time immemorial, and no power in the world can move it. But the rock has a very practical and realistic function. Scientists use it and similar rocks all over the world for seismic predictions. Sayhuite. In southern Peru, there is a very special place, the ruins of Sayhuite. The ruined city has hardly been explored yet, and at the same time is a veritable treasure trove of architectural feats. Researchers are paying special attention to the perplexing stone of Sayhuite. The boulder has gigantic dimensions. It's 2.5 meters high, has a diameter of 11 meters, weighs over 32 tons, and is made of granite. The age of the granite boulder is unclear. Its surface is decorated with artistically chiseled images such as animals, people, buildings, stairs, and canal systems. It's completely unclear why this rock was created and what purpose it served. Some experts assume that it's an ancient map of an Inca city. Other opinions tend toward uses for religious rituals and ceremonies. Still, others speak of a cult of water worship, as the canals and water pipes are depicted in great detail. In any case, the Sayhuite stone is impressive, and who knows, maybe one day its secret will be unraveled. Prehistoric lines throughout Malta. The whole of Malta is covered with lines reminiscent of tracks left by motor vehicles on dirt roads. Scrapes up to almost half a meter deep at intervals of just over a meter, forming an elongated parallel network across the island. Where do these lines come from? How did they come into being? A definitive explanation has not yet been found. The theory that they could be the drag marks of cart vehicles has its pitfalls. For if carts, poles, or sledges leave such deep tracks over the course of time, the hooves of the animals that pulled the carts should also be visible. The course of the tracks is equally curious. Some of the tracks lead directly towards steeply sloping reefs. Others lead along complicated routes up and down hills. The theory that it could be an irrigation system does not seem 100% likely because of this sometimes puzzling routing. If the island could talk, what would it tell us about these tracks? Merv. The beautiful ruins of the city of Merv are a World Heritage Site. This preserves the memory of a city that has a truly moving story to tell. Merv was founded as an oasis city in Central Asia, more precisely in Turkmenistan. And since then, there has followed a wild series of conquests and changes of rulers that is unparalleled. Merv was conquered by Alexander the Great. The city was destroyed, rebuilt, and then fell into the hands of the Muslim Arabs. Rule was taken over by the Seljuks, and Merv was declared the capital of the East, until the day Tolui Khan, the son of Genghis Khan, invaded Merv and killed, man and mouse, everyone who got in the Mongols' way. The siege is considered one of the bloodiest in world history and wiped out the city. Whoever wanders through the ruins of Merv wanders into truly eventful history. Well preserved, for example, is the mausoleum of Sultan Sanshar, which towers over the ruins. Maya Stele. The Maya are famous for their architecture, their artistry, and their scientific knowledge, which still surprises us today. Tikal, the ancient Mayan city with its famous stepped temples, is a center of attraction for many tourists visiting Guatemala. Less well known, but all the more magnificent, are the Maya stelae that can be marveled at in the Quirigua Archaeological Park. Steles that rise up to 10 meters into the sky have elaborate decorations carved into the stone. Deities, hieroglyphics, scenes from the everyday life of the inhabitants, religious rituals, all this and much more has been recorded on the stelae for future generations by the ancient Mayan artists. In addition to the stelae, there are also old ruins to visit in Quirigua Park that remain from this beautiful palace city. A huge bomb in the garden. A garden owner in Vietnam discovered an archaeological find of a special kind. While working in the garden, he came across metal. Curious, he dug further, only to discover to his horror that he was digging up a huge bomb. The monstrosity measured 2.5 meters in length and 0.6 meters in diameter, weighing almost 1.5 tons. Military specialists were called in to defuse the bomb and transport it to military premises for further protection. Bomb finds in Vietnam are not uncommon, but this specimen in the front garden was certainly one of the largest ever to come to light. The 21st century has well-trained scientists, a global network of experts in anthropology, history and culture, and the latest technologies. There seems to be a conclusive explanation for everything, yet there are finds that leave researchers baffled. We present 10 incredible finds that scientists still can't explain. Imposing buildings with mysterious origins. Few people are familiar with the Kailasa Temple, yet the 18.5-meter high and 60-meter wide structure in the Indian state of Maharashtra is no less imposing than the pyramids of Giza. For years, researchers assumed that it would take 18 years to build, until doubts arose. An estimated 400,000 tons of hard basalt had to be removed for the construction. At 12 working hours per day, that would be an incredible 5 tons of removal per hour, using only hammer and chisel. The construction time is not the only unresolved issue surrounding the Kailasa Temple. Despite intensive excavations, scientists found no tools near the temple. How the narrow canals for the irrigation system were created is unclear. They are too narrow for a human, and mechanical drilling devices would not be invented until centuries later. Regardless of the many unanswered questions, historians agree on one thing: the Kailasa Temple is an architectural masterpiece. The clay tablets of Glosel. In 1924, a 17-year-old boy finds a cave containing artifacts in Glosel, France, and sets in motion one of the most controversial scientific debates of the 20th century. The amateur archaeologist Antonin Morlaix wrote an article together with the finder Emile Fraden, calling the site the oldest excavation site in the world. An amateur and a farm boy. Anthropologists remained unimpressed. Initial scientific investigations disagreed about the age of the artifacts. Opinions also differed on the authenticity. Later excavations in 1983 and 1995 used new technologies, but still came to different conclusions. An annual panel commemorates the excavation site. The organizers hope that one day they will be able to shed light on the matter. Whatever conclusion modern science comes to, one person will not live to see it. Fraden, who started it all, died in 2010 at the age of 103. Cemetery of the Fine People. An inconspicuous piece of land in 1974 on the island of Sardinia, a farmer plows his field and comes across a find that makes the Italian Mediterranean island the center of archaeology overnight. Researchers uncovered sandstone sculptures that became known as the Giants of Monte Prama. The groundbreaking find shed new light on Sardinia's cultural status in the Bronze Age. Apparently, it was the local Nuragic culture and not that of the ancient Greeks that first created freestanding sculptures to honor deceased aristocrats. Scientists unearthed thousands of relics until research funds ran out in 1979. 30 years passed until archaeologists returned to the site in 2014. Ground-penetrating radar revealed 8 hectares of land that had not yet been investigated. It remains to be seen what secrets the cemetery will reveal in the years to come. Mysterious signs of an ancient culture. It seems to be a normal day for workers in the Jordanian capital Amman, where they start building a highway to the city of Zarqa in 1974. Their working day comes to an abrupt end after they come across an ancient excavation site. It was the beginning of investigations whose results shed new light on the history of the region. Scientists excavated numerous statues of different shapes. The finds included life-size full-body sculptures and busts, some of which had 2 heads. The limestone and clay figures seem to have been buried ritually. It remained unclear who they were modelled on. Astonishment spread when the statues were dated to the 7th millennium BC. This made it possible to precisely classify the early Neolithic settlement there in the corresponding era. In addition, the statues found at Ain Ghazal mark the beginning of artistic and sculptural craftsmanship in Mesopotamia. Tool with unclear function. The Archaeological Museum of Heraklion in Crete counts special artifacts among its exhibits. They are huge axes that reach several meters in height and tower far above any human being. The double axe, the so-called labrys, played an important role in the Bronze Age. In the period from 3000 to 1450 BC, it was a tool for working the fields in the Minoan culture, which was mainly represented on the Greek island of Crete. Scientists are still unable to explain why the axes are oversized. They could not be used as tools, at least not by a person of normal height. Are the huge axes of Minoans an indication of giants? An interesting theory that is doubted by researchers. They assume that the oversized double axes were created for the worship of Minoan deities. Scientists have not yet been able to find evidence for this purely symbolic function of the giant axes. Proof of the existence of giants. The odachi, a sword with a curved blade, dates back to 15th century Japan. The typical length of a blade was 1 meter. The find of the Norimitsu odachi, whose length is 3.77 meters, is all the more astonishing. With a proud weight of 14.5 kilograms, it could not possibly have been wielded by a human. Is it another indication of the existence of giants? Unlike the giant axes of the Minoans, the purpose of the Norimitsu odachi is unclear. Because of the long, awkward blade, it had to be carried on the back. Its popularity quickly declined and it disappeared from the hands of the troops. A symbolic function to honor war heroes is unlikely with the odachi. Scholars speculated that a blacksmith once used the huge sword to demonstrate his craftsmanship. What the real purpose of the Norimitsu odachi was remains a mystery. A mysterious linen book. The Liber Linteus is an old linen book in which a mummy was wrapped. In German-speaking countries, it's also called the Agrama Mumienbinde. Agram is an obsolete name for the Croatian capital Zagreb, who is in possession of the mummy. The building speculator Michael von Barak brought it back from a trip to Egypt in 1849. 18 years later, when Barak had died, his brother bequeathed the mummy to the Agrama Museum. Researchers there examined the mummy bandage and recognized Etruscan writings. 12 columns stretch across a 3.4-meter-long linen cloth and make up a ritual calendar. The book had been dated to 250 to 100 BC and wrapped around the wife of an Egyptian tailor. Was she wrapped in the writings for a specific reason? Did the linen book have a specific meaning? Or did the undertakers just run out of normal mummy bandages? Researchers are still working to answer these questions today. High art or clever imitation. The Lady of Elche is a bust found in 1897 in the town of the same name in Spain. It resides in the National Museum of Archaeology in Madrid. What is special about the Lady of Elche is the multicultural influence she displays. The shape of her face follows Greek aesthetics, while her clothing is clearly of Iberian origin. The jewelry points in a completely different direction and refers to the North African city of Carthage. Since its discovery, scholars have argued about its authenticity. Doubters cite the dating to the 5th or 4th century BC as evidence of a replica. How can a bust made of simple limestone, unprotected and exposed to weather, remain immaculately preserved for several decades? A question that does not matter to the people of Elche. They have been fighting for years for the return of the Lady of Elche to her hometown. Wrath of a deity. In the middle of the 19th century, workers found an imposing stone statue near the Mexican town of Coatlinchan. It was dedicated to Tlaloc, one of the most important gods of the Aztec culture. The monolith, 7 meters high and weighing 152 tons, was exposed to the weather without protection. When researchers prepared it for the transport to the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City in 1964, they found it in perfect condition. Connoisseurs of Aztec culture were not surprised. After all, Tlaloc was the god of the tides and ruler of rain and wind. They were all the more concerned when they saw how quickly the stone statue was decaying in its new place. How could these few years take such a toll on a monolith that had survived several decades without damage? The answer seems obvious. By removing it from its original place of homage, the people had incurred the wrath of Tlaloc. Whatever is behind the statue's rapid decay, in 2014, anthropologists began restoring the imposing statue. Mayan artifact or clever deception. In 2011, a murmur went through the world when the discovery of numerous stone tablets in Mexico was announced. The artifacts were attributed to the Maya. This ancient advanced civilization was the talk of the town at the time. The Mayan calendar prophesied the end of the world in December 2012. Through the clay tablets, researchers and lay people hoped to gain a deeper insight into the events that would await us at the end of 2012. Among the stone tablets was one that seemed to represent the cosmic being Cthulhu. It became famous through the American writer H.P. Lovecraft and was considered a fictional creation of the writer. Do the stone tablets found prove that Cthulhu is more than the invention of an author? If not, by whom and for what purpose were the stone tablets forged? These questions are still the subject of heated discussions between scientists and conspiracy theorists. The Headless Vikings. This mass grave was discovered and uncovered by archaeologists in Weymouth, England in 2009. Inside, they found 54 decapitated skeletons and 51 heads. After extensive scientific testing, it was finally determined that the dead were Scandinavian Vikings. Since mass graves in general, and especially of this size, are extremely unusual and were rare, especially in the period of origin, this find attracted a corresponding amount of attention. The dead appeared to have lived between the 5th and 10th centuries and were between 15 and 30 years old. This evidence suggests that they belonged to the forces of the Vikings invading England, who engaged in bloody combat with Anglo-Saxons living there. It's strange, however, that the skeletons show no battle wounds apart from decapitation and appear to have been entirely naked at the time of their deaths. However, they seem to have tried to prevent their decapitation with their bare hands. The grave itself looks very chaotic, as if the burial of the Vikings at this site had not been planned. Moreover, the 3 missing heads seem to have belonged to high-ranking members who were probably impaled on sticks and taken away as a warning. There are several theories as to why these men were killed, but none of them has been confirmed so far. The bloody truth about vampires. Nowadays, everyone has a clear idea of what makes a vampire, but for a very long time this was not the case. Those who are not familiar with the decomposition process of a corpse can easily be under a misapprehension. So the fear of vampires in past centuries stemmed from the fact that the skin would dry up, making the teeth and fingernails look as if they had grown a lot. In addition, when the viscera decompose, a dark liquid comes out of the mouth and nose that looks very much like blood. Someone seeing the dead person like this could therefore get the impression that he had turned into a vampire and was drinking blood. Furthermore, vampires were said to be the cause of terrible plagues and diseases. Fighting them thus gave people the feeling that they could control the rampant disease. To prevent a relative from rising again after death, many corpses were nailed to their coffins with wooden stakes through their hearts, or their mouths were filled with bricks and rope. These procedures gave today's archaeologists some strange and gruesome finds. The Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is a collection of various texts with spells and help for the dead. It was written by Egyptian priests and was intended to help the deceased on their journey through the underworld, called Duat. It describes the descent of the soul into the realm of the dead through the weighing of his heart, where his good and his evil deeds are considered to the judgment of whether he will receive punishment or be allowed to spend his time in the afterlife with joy as a good soul. Usually, a copy of it was placed in the grave of each dead person. Some texts from it also adorn the walls of many tombs and sarcophagi. It can be dated approximately from 1550 to about 50 BC. The Baby Mass Grave. The archaeologist Ross Voss came across this creepy find while roaming the catacombs of Ashkelon, Israel. At first, he thought the numerous small bones he found were chicken bones. However, further tests and examinations revealed that they were the remains of well over 100 babies. These were dated to the Roman era. None of the children was more than a week old when they died, and moreover, they were all completely healthy. On this basis, scientists suspect that these are unwanted babies who were abandoned according to Roman tradition. This served as birth control or was practiced by women who could not take care of their child. Furthermore, at that time, this procedure was not considered a crime, as the Romans believed in saving the children who were supposed to survive according to divine will. In addition, they were not yet considered full human beings. The alien skulls. In Sonora, Mexico, a small cemetery was accidentally stumbled upon that contained 25 skulls, 13 of them deformed in such a way that they have the appearance of aliens. Jewelry and other objects suggest that the skulls found were ritually deformed by applying pressure to the bone using bandages and pieces of wood. This was common in many cultures, usually either for religious purposes or to make different social groups distinguishable. Unfortunately, we can only speculate about the reason in this case. The mass grave of the giant wombats. This other mass grave on our list was discovered in Australia. It contained several specimens of the so-called Diprotodon optatum, a giant wombat-like animal. It belonged to the megafauna, the name given to the group of prehistoric, very large animals. For a long time, it also lived in peaceful coexistence with the Aborigines before becoming extinct about 25,000 years ago. How exactly the animals ended up in the aforementioned mass grave and what they died of has not yet been clarified. The Rongo Rongo Tablets. Rongo Rongo is a glyphic script that does not resemble anything we humans know today. These tablets were found on the Easter Islands as early as the 19th century, but to this day they cannot be deciphered. However, the scientists working on the tablets have at least been able to extract some kind of calendar and genealogical information from the glyphs, although their meaning is still unclear. There are about 24 tablets made from various pieces of wood, including driftwood. Some of them have been badly damaged over time by fire or weather conditions. Research currently assumes that only a very small group of people understood these characters. Comparable material has also not yet been discovered. The Tomb of the Red Queen. The tomb referred to in this section was found in 1994 in a Maya temple near Palenque in Mexico. Two archaeologists had the task of stabilizing the staircase of the temple pyramid and stumbled upon it. It is currently assumed that a woman named Itzhak-Buajor was laid to rest in this tomb. The estimated date of origin is between 600 and 700 AD. Judging by the location, the grave goods, and the sarcophagi, the woman was most likely a noblewoman of Mayan society. The tomb received its iconic name because of the red vermilion powder that covered everything when the chamber was first opened. The wooden idol from the Shigir Moor. The wooden idol mentioned is an ornate pole discovered in the Shigir Moor north of Yekaterinburg in Russia. It was stumbled upon by chance, as so often happens when a peat cutting was being carried out in January 1890. The idol surfaced at a depth of 4 meters. A German-Russian research team is extensively studying the piece, which dates to around 9500 BC, and suspects that it's a representation of an anthropomorphic stake deity. Originally, the idol had a size of about 5 meters. However, due to age and weather conditions, this decreased considerably to a still stately 3.8 meters. It's therefore assumed that it was erected for a long time in the open air, where it was used for ceremonies and ritual acts. It was made of larch wood and shows not only Mesolithic wood carvings, but also a form of monumental art that was completely unknown in Western Europe. The wooden idol from the Shigir Moor is so important for the scientific world because it proves that there were human settlements in this area 2,400 years earlier than originally assumed. Horses and chariots. Almost everyone is familiar with the world-famous terracotta warriors, but hardly anyone knows about the sensational discovery of this burial site. Near a remote village, the tomb of a ruler of the Zhou dynasty was discovered, which contained 48 chariots and over 100 horses as grave goods. What's more, the whole thing is considerably older than the terracotta army by about 600 years. The tomb on the banks of the Yellow River is about 3,000 years old. With its incredible dimensions, this site is the largest of its kind to date. Since the ruler buried there was known for his great campaigns, it's assumed that the horse and chariots were his real cavalry. Moreover, it's reasonable to conclude that the animals were merely stunned and then brought to the tomb alive, as some skeletons were found with twisted limbs and tied legs. Since there have been countless archaeological sensational finds since research has been given higher budgets for them, from the royal tombs in Egypt to the exploration of the catacombs of many large cities, to diving operations in sunken buildings and ships, some of the most remarkable and, above all, mysterious ones are probably listed here. They show us that we are far from knowing everything about our human history and spur us on to ever better achievements and even more sophisticated research. Do you have your own explanations or theories about the findings presented? Or have you perhaps already had experiences in this field that you would like to share with us all? Feel free to write it in the comments and discuss. Science is the ultimate authority when in doubt. We trust in it and we believe in it. But what happens when science has no explanation? Science can't make sense of the following discoveries and is in the dark, but see for yourself. Building from mammoth bones. A stunning example of Ice Age architecture has been unearthed in Russia's forest steppe, a huge circular structure built from the bones of at least 60 woolly mammoths. Why our ancestors would build this structure 40 feet in diameter is now being studied in depth by scientists, and the structure raises questions. The structure seems to have been significant to its builders in any case, as it took them a lot of time and effort to erect it. The hut appeared to have been inhabited, as cooking fire residues and food remains were found within the walls. In general, mammoth bone structures are known to archaeologists. Similar structures have been found throughout Eastern Europe on a much smaller scale of a few meters in diameter. These sites, including others found in Kostenki in the 1950s and 60s, date back to as far as 22,000 years. However, the size of this structure makes it exceptional, scientists say. This is evidence that it was also considered a landmark, a meeting place, or a place of ceremonial importance. The origin of ball sports. Thousands of years ago, various teams would meet on a stone court wearing belts and loincloths and use their hips to propel a hard rubber ball towards the goals at either end of the court. The ball game, reenacting a creation story recorded in the Maya religious text Popol Vuh, was an important part of political, religious, and social life for the Maya and Aztecs, as well as the Olmecs before them. But archaeologists do not yet know much about where exactly people first played the game, or how it became a cultural phenomenon that spread across what is now Guatemala, Belize, Mexico, Honduras, and El Salvador. The pitch, a stony narrow passageway about 50 meters long, bordered by stone walls and mounds of earth, occupied a place of honor in the heart of the ancient city. But sometime between 1174 and 1102 BC, the inhabitants dismantled part of it, thus ending the game ritual. It turned out, however, that underneath the 12th century BC pitch was another, even older playing field. This was the time when the first ball games were invented, and games were being played in front of an audience on a playing field. Largest ancient ivory factory of antiquity discovered in Pakistan. Huge quantities of discarded ivory fragments have been unearthed in the ancient port city of Banbahor, making it the largest ivory production facility in the ancient world. Discarded pieces of tusks indicate massive industrial-style processing of ivory. Archaeologists re-excavating the 2,100-year-old port city of Banbahor in Pakistan's Sindh province have discovered over 40 kilograms of discarded ivory shards dating back to around 800 AD, which they believe is evidence of the largest ivory carving in the Islamic era. Incidentally, the find is limited only to what the early ivory craftsmen had thrown away. Banbahor was founded about 65 kilometers or 40 miles east of Karachi, at the mouth of the Indus River in the 1st century BC during the Scythian-Parthian period. Once an important port and trading hub in ancient times with trade links around the Indian Ocean and the Far East, it was defended by a large fortified citadel of about 14,000 square meters. Ivory was shipped from there. Russian treasure chest contains remains of 2,000-year-old nomadic king. A farmer digging a pit on his land came across a sunken ancient burial mound of a nomadic king who lived 2,000 years ago. The Laughing Man also had an artificially deformed, egg-shaped skull. Besides the chief's skeleton, stunning gold and silver jewelry, weapons, valuables, and artistic household items were found. After the burial site was examined in detail, scientists came to the conclusion that it was a king's mound, one of the places where ancient nomads buried their nobility. The king's mound belonged to the Sarmatian people. Their area of distribution, at its greatest extent in the 1st century AD, stretched from the Caspian Sea across Eurasia to present-day Poland. The burial is believed to have been given to a leader of a nomadic Sarmatian tribe that dominated this part of Russia until the 5th century AD, and to other important figures of the ancient world, including a laughing young man with an artificially deformed egg-shaped skull and excellent teeth, whose mummy survived for 2 millennia. Dinosaur with heart-shaped coccyx bones. Recent findings have identified a new species of dinosaur that provides scientists with a lot of information about the prehistoric animal's habits. It's Minyamawantuka moyawamkia, a dinosaur that had a tail with a set of bones in the shape of a heart. With skin, however, the heart shape was largely hidden. The name comes from Swahili. Minyamawamtuka means animal of the Matuka. Matuka is the name of the riverbed where the dinosaur was discovered. The second word, moyawamkia, means something like heart is tail. This dinosaur matches other similar titanosaur sauropods discovered previously, but at the same time represents a new link between the species. Although titanosaurs became one of the most successful dinosaur groups before the infamous mass extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs, their early evolutionary history remains obscure, and Minyamawamtuka helps to tell these beginnings. Libro de los Epitomes. Hernando Colón, or Ferdinand Columbus, was born in 1488 to the explorer Christopher Columbus and his mistress Beatriz Enriquez de Arana. Although Colón was an illegitimate child, he was acknowledged by his father. Like father, like son, Colón took on a larger-than-life project. While Columbus explored the oceans and set out in search of the New World, his son eagerly tried to read every book he could get his hands on. In fact, he wanted to create a universal library containing all the books in all languages and on all subjects to be found both within and outside Christianity. For his zealous efforts, Colón even hired a group of scholars to review the books in his possession and write a summary on the fly for a groundbreaking 16-volume manuscript cross-referenced to other items in the library collection. The manuscript was called Libro de los Epitomes, the Book of Epitomes, and has been compared to a medieval search engine because of its extensive cross-referencing. The knowledge about the books and other early printed material that Colón had collected was meticulously summarized and classified. For centuries, the Book of Epitomes was considered lost until it was recently identified as part of the Arnamagnæan collection at the University of Copenhagen. The summaries fill over 2,000 pages, and much of it relates to the books that have been completely lost to history. For shorter volumes, the scribes added 1 page. For books like those of the great Greek philosophers, more extensive summaries were added, taking up dozens of pages. Unopened sarcophagus. In the Egyptian city of Alexandria, a sealed sarcophagus was found 16 feet underground. It's still not known who or what is inside the nondescript black granite coffin, but it's clear that it has not been opened since it was closed more than 2,000 years ago. Ayman Ashmawi, head of the State Sector for Ancient Egyptian Antiquities, reports a layer of mortar between the lid and the body of the sarcophagus, suggesting that it has never been opened. Considering that many ancient tombs in Egypt have been looted over the years, an untouched sarcophagus is quite a rare find. The sarcophagus was discovered when a site in the Sidi Gaba district of the Ptolemaic dynasty was inspected before construction of a building began. In addition, an alabaster statue with a man's head was found in the same tomb. 2,500-year-old horse remains in Bulgaria. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a Thracian carriage and 2 horses that appear to have been buried upright. The carriage and horse skeletons are 2,500 years old and were discovered in the village of Seveshtari in northeastern Bulgaria. The 2-wheeled carriage and the carcasses of the horses were found together with some ornaments in a Thracian grave. The find came as a complete surprise to scientists, as treasure hunters have looted many of the ancient burial mounds found in the region to find gold, even though UNESCO has banned this activity. Fish source in antiquity. The production and trade of fish sauce was a significant and widespread industry in ancient times, stretching from Britain to the Black Sea. Roman fish sauce, known as garum, was one of the most popular and commonly used ingredients in the Roman pantry. Some historians have even argued that fish sauce, now common throughout Southeast Asia, was introduced to the continental sub-region via the Silk Road. The Carthaginians were early producers and traders of fish sauce, which they made along the coast of Lake Tunisia. A 5th century BC Punic shipwreck found off the coast of Ibiza may have carried a cargo of fish sauce stored in amphorae made in Gades and Tingis. Ancient Maya artifacts. Since late 2011, a story has been circulating on various websites about a box of carved stones and clay tablets allegedly discovered in an ancient Mayan temple. On these artifacts are images of classical saucer-shaped flying bodies and large-eyed aliens. According to the latest reports, these artifacts were discovered decades ago when archaeological teams removed debris characteristically preserved by Mayan temple builders as they rebuilt the structures over time. The collection of statues, masks and plaques found in the interiors of one particular temple in Mexico was considered evidence of Mayan contact with extraterrestrials and kept under lock and key. What do you think about these finds? Is too much being read into it, or could the truth be even more shocking? Feel free to leave us a comment. Africa, the black continent that various colonial powers, including France, Portugal and Germany, tried to subjugate. They failed miserably in this endeavor because the country and its people have preserved their own culture and still inspire many tourists with their beauty. Even though the country has been sadly exploited in many ways, in terms of mineral resources and nature, there are still inexplicable things to discover in Africa, as the examples in this video will show. Are you fascinated by mysterious things and archaeological discoveries? Then give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Hidden Worlds, and join us on our journey. Sky Stone. The stone, known as the Sky Stone, was discovered around 1990 by geologist and archaeologist Angelo Pittoni in Sierra Leone, West Africa. It's a strange blue stone whose origin was initially unknown. Pittoni sent the stone to several laboratories around the world for examination. All experts agreed that the blue stone did not resemble any type of rock known in nature, so it must have been artificially created. The Italian geologist believed that it was a very unusual find, a crystal found in the diamond fields of Sierra Leone that resembles pure turquoise. Analysis carried out on this stone of heaven revealed that the stone was not made of any type of stone known on Earth. It was found to be 77% oxygen, along with traces of carbon, silicon, calcium, and sodium. This composition makes the Sky Stone resemble a type of concrete or lump, and it appears to have been artificially colored. Another mystery associated with the Sky Stone is that it was found exclusively in soil layers dating to at least 12,000 BC. It cannot be ruled out that this type of stone was produced by an ancient advanced civilization. Ruins of Gedi. The ruins of Gedi are one of Kenya's great mysteries. Situated in an idyllic spot on the Indian Ocean and deep in a lush forest, it was thought to have been built in the early 13th century, although most scholars lack the vital evidence to support this. To this day, numerous coal brick houses, a palace and an impressive mosque can still be seen there. But it's not only the good condition of the ruins that amazes visitors, but also the progressive character of the settlement. Gedi was in many ways a very modern town with roads, running water and flush toilets. Correcting the assumption that pre-colonial Africa was far behind the rest of the world, Gedi was among the cosmopolitan cities of the past. Archaeologists have found Ming vases from China, Venetian glass, and other artifacts from around the world, among other things. The potpourri of history is clear evidence that the Muslim inhabitants of the Kenyan coastal city traded extensively with cultures outside their own, building an incredible empire that has now been swallowed up in the tropical forests along the coast. The surrounding area has since been declared a national park. Remote Island. The island of Anjouan, off the east coast of Africa, is mostly dark volcanic rock. But researchers have now found stone formations on the island that should not actually appear there. They are quartzite, a metamorphic rock that forms from sandstone as it would occur in a riverbed or delta, and not as it would on a volcanic island. The stones were found near a mountain village called Tsembaho, which lies between heavily forested volcanic slopes. Researchers discovered during investigations that a nearby ridge called Habakari Nagani is even almost half quartzite. Somehow, this rock got into the ocean basin between Africa and Madagascar, which is not supposed to contain any quartzite at all. New species of prehistoric man in South African cave. Scientists have announced the discovery of 15 partial skeletons belonging to what is believed to be a previously unknown species of prehistoric man. The remains were recovered from Rising Star Cave in South Africa by a team of female scientists and climbers who had to descend through a narrow, vertical shaft only 8 inches wide at the top to reach the burial chamber below. In total, more than 1,500 bone fragments were discovered, the largest single paleoanthropological find of its kind in Africa. Scientists believe that the remains may be from the earliest members of the genus Homo, to which modern humans belong. The newly discovered Homo naledi will certainly shed more light on the evolution of mankind. The 15 partial but well-preserved skeletons include both males and females, as well as old and young individuals. Stone circles of Senegambia. The stone circles of Senegambia are located in a zone about 100 kilometers wide and 350 kilometers long north of the Gambia River and comprise of 1,053 stone circles with a total of 28,931 monoliths. 4 representative groups of these circles have been selected for inscription on the World Heritage List at 2 sites in the Gambia and 2 in Senegal. The 4 sites include 93 stone circles and numerous tumuli and burial mounds. Their age and origin remain a mystery, but a limited amount of recent excavation work suggests that they were built between the 3rd century BC and the 16th century AD. They thus predate the current inhabitants of the area, the Manding people, who settled there later. Earliest evidence of stone tool making. Our ancestors were familiar with making stone tools even earlier than we thought, about 700,000 years earlier. That is the finding of the West Turkana Archaeological Project. Archaeologists have found the earliest stone artifacts at a site called Lomekwi 3 on the western shore of Lake Turkana in northern Kenya, dating back 3.3 million years. These tools shed more light on a previously unknown period of hominin behavior and can tell us a lot about the cognitive development of our ancestors that we cannot understand from fossils alone, scientists say. The find also disproves the long-held assumption that Homo habilis was the first tool maker. In ancient Egypt, life wasn't easy for elite pets. For ancient Egyptians, owning a menagerie of exotic animals meant power and wealth, but the remains of baboons, hippos, and other elite pets buried in a cemetery near the Nile more than 5,000 years ago reveal the darker side of the status symbols of the time. Baboon skeletons found at one grave bear dozens of broken hand and foot bones, suggesting punishing beatings. At least 2 baboons have classic parry fractures, broken arms that typically occur when they try to protect their heads from a blow. A hippo calf broke its leg trying to free itself from a shackle, and an antelope and a wild cow also have injuries, likely related to being shackled. The zookeepers of the time definitely had problems with the proper girth with the animals, because the practical means of keeping animals in captivity were not as well resolved as they are today. The animals were found in the ancient cemetery of Hierakonpolis, a city that flourished long before Egypt became a unified kingdom ruled by pharaohs. Excavations have uncovered 2 elephants, a leopard, 2 crocodiles, and the remains of 9 other exotic species buried near the tombs of powerful citizens. Nowhere else in Egypt have archaeologists found such a variety of ancient zoo animals that were likely sacrificed after the death of their owners. Researchers get to the bottom of fairy circles. Fairy circles are round gaps in the grassland that are very evenly distributed across the landscape and only occur along the Namib Desert in southern Africa and in parts of Australia. Various theories circulate about the actual origin of these unusual patterns, ranging from poisonous euphorbia plants or rising gases to ants, termites, or the struggle of the local vegetation for scarce water resources. Scientists from the University of Göttingen, Australia, and Israel have now got to the bottom of their course with soil tests and drones. The results suggest that the fairy circles in Australia were caused by soil weathering due to heavy rainfall, extreme heat, and evaporation. The extensive data collected by the researchers argued against a connection with subterranean termite structures. So far, fairy circles are only known from southwest Africa around the Namib Desert and from Western Australia near the mining town of Newman. The origin of the Namibian circles has been a mystery since the early 1970s, while the Australian fairy circles were only discovered in 2014. Despite a distance of around 10,000 kilometers, both occurrences show an identical spatial pattern, suggesting that there must be a connection. Bakoni Ruins. Makadodorp is a small, unassuming town on the edge of a bluff, only 38 kilometers from the African fly fishing mecca of Dulstrom, with its many accommodation and dining options. The enigmatic stone walls of the Bakoni ruins there have puzzled historians for some time and have been the subject of much controversy and heated debate over the years. The ruins consist of thousands of stone walls scattered across the hills surrounding the city. Described by guidebooks as the lost city of South Africa, the walls are believed to be arranged in a complex of sorts and linked to the long-lost Bakoni tribe. Their origin dates back 200,000 years, according to researchers. Church of St. George in Lalibela. The Church of St. George is one of 11 rock-hewn monolithic churches in Lalibela, a town in the Amhara region of Ethiopia. Originally called Roha, the historical and religious site of Lalibela was named after King Gebra Maskal Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty, who commissioned its construction. St. George's Church was hewn downwards from a type of volcanic tuff rock. It dates to the late 12th or early 13th century AD and was built during the reign of King Gebra Maskal Lalibela of the late Zagwe dynasty. According to Ethiopian cultural history, Bete Gorgis was built after King Lalibela had a vision in which he was commissioned to build the church. St. George and God himself are said to have given him the commission. Lalibela is still a pilgrimage site for members of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Moreover, the church itself is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. In our enlightened world, there are supposedly no more mysteries, and science can simply explain every phenomenon. Perhaps then the following findings are not of this world, but see for yourself. Khufu Ship Mystery. The discovery in 1954 of the Khufu ship, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh buried inside his funerary pyramid, is one of the most important discoveries of the last century. The wooden ship is 4,600 years old and was reportedly so well constructed that it could still sail if put back on the Nile today. Although the exact purpose of the boat remains a mystery, historians believe it was placed in the pyramid for the pharaoh Khufu, who is buried here. It's sometimes referred to as the Sun Barge because it's believed to have been installed in Khufu's burial chamber to enable him to sail across the sky with the sun god Ra after his death. It was discovered on May 26, 1954 by archaeologist Kamel El Malak while digging under a stone wall on the south side of the Great Pyramid. The Valley of the Golden Mummies. In 1996, an amazing discovery was made in Egypt. Archaeologists found a 2-square-mile necropolis that contained a number of important tombs. During the initial excavation, 4 of the tombs were found to contain 105 well-preserved mummies, many of them with elaborate golden masks. Thus, the cemetery became known as the Valley of the Golden Mummies. However, it is believed that the initial discovery was only the tip of the iceberg, as it's thought there may be as many as 10,000 mummies in the cemetery. The mummies were uncovered by Dr. Zahi Hawass and his team in the Baharia Oasis, located about 380 kilometers west of the pyramids. A guard named Abdul Magud had been trying to restrain his donkey when the donkey's leg broke through a hole in the ground. When Magud peered through the hole, he saw gold glittering below. Archaeologists who were called in declared the discovery the find of the century. Roman-era mummy found in Egyptian oasis. Egyptian archaeologists uncovered an intricately carved plaster sarcophagus depicting a wide-eyed woman in a tunic in a newly discovered tomb complex in a remote desert oasis, announced the Egyptian Antiquities Authority in Cairo. It's the first Roman-style mummy found in the Baharia Oasis, about 300 kilometers southwest of Cairo, said archaeologist Mahmoud Afifi, who led the excavation. The find was part of a cemetery from the Greco-Roman period with 14 tombs. He also said it's a unique find, confirming initial investigations indicating that a mummy lies inside the coffin. The carved plaster sarcophagus is only 1 meter long and shows a woman wearing a long tunic, headscarf, bracelet, shoes, and a pearl necklace. Colored stones in the eyes of the sarcophagus gave the appearance that she was awake. Afifi said they have not yet dated the new discovery, but the burial style suggests she belonged to the long period of Roman rule in Egypt, which lasted several hundred years and began in 31 BC. A rare statue. Archaeologists in Egypt have uncovered 2 new artifacts from ancient times, a rare statue of one of the country's most famous pharaohs and a tiny ancient sphinx. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities announced that a pink granite statue of the famous ancient ruler Ramses II has been found, describing the artifact as one of the rarest archaeological discoveries. A hieroglyphic inscription on the back of the stone bore the name Strong Bull, a reference to the strength and vitality of the king who was buried. The statue, covered in mud, was found in the property of a man arrested for illegal excavations near the ancient pyramids of Giza, according to the ministry's statement. Fortunately, the statue is now in the possession of the authorities. Pylos combat agate. In 2015, archaeologists discovered an intact tomb of a Mycenaean warrior or priest, later dubbed the Griffin Warrior, in an olive grove near Pylos, Greece. It dates to around 1450 BC. It's an incredible find. Researchers recovered gold and silver cups, weapons and armor, and 50 gold and precious stone seals engraved with intricate images. Now researchers have fully analyzed one of these agate seals and found it to be on par with the greatest works of art in the ancient world. But unlike ancient Greek sculptures or Roman mosaics, the seal is difficult to see without a magnifying glass. The engraved image is less than 1.5 inches long, but shows an incredibly detailed scene of a warrior slaying 2 of his enemies. The seal has been dubbed the Pylos combat agate. The stunning battle scene on the seal stone, one of the greatest masterpieces of Aegean art, stands in comparison with some of the drawings in the Michelangelo exhibition, now on view at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, said Malcolm H. Weiner, an expert on Aegean prehistory and curator emeritus at the Metropolitan Museum. The cocaine mummies. Evidence showing that ancient Egyptians had crossed the Atlantic 3,000 years ago, long before Columbus in 1492, comes not only from emulating cultural traditions like Peru and the Canary Islands, where evidence of trepanation and mummification has been found, but from actual Egyptian mummies themselves. Using an electron microscope, scientists discovered grains of tobacco adhering to the fibers from the bandages of the mummies. This initial discovery was called a lie by authorities, and older scholars insisted that there had simply been contamination with modern objects, perhaps from an archaeologist smoking a pipe nearby. Tobacco did not come to Europe from South America until the time of Columbus, 2,700 years later, which rules out the possibility that tobacco was present during the reign of Ramses, around 1213 BC. A few years later, Dr. Svelta Balabanova, a forensic toxicologist, followed up on the original findings with even more intriguing evidence. To rule out the possibility of contemporary contamination, Dr. Balabanova took samples of the mummy's intestinal tissue, and to her amazement, she discovered traces of cannabis, coca, and tobacco. This was definitive proof. The ancient Egyptians learned of intoxicants from the Americas. The oldest fossil trees. At 3 billion in number, Earth's trees are estimated to outnumber the stars in the Milky Way. These wooden marvels suck carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, protect soil from erosion, provide water circulation in ecosystems, and support countless forms of life. The roots that sprout from the base of tree trunks are the arboreal equivalent of a digestive tract, exchanging water and nutrients with the surrounding soil. Roots literally anchor a plant, and the more extensive they are, the bigger and stronger the trees can grow. Now, scientists have discovered the oldest known forest on Earth outside Cairo, New York. At 385 million years old, the ancient forest predates the origin of seed-producing plants, a group that includes nearly all living trees. The Paleozoic forest is also home to the remains of intricate tree root systems that bear an incredible resemblance to the plant structures of modern trees. The oldest known strain of plague. The world's oldest known strain of plague was found outside a small town in western Sweden nearly 5,000 years ago. A group of researchers from Sweden, Denmark, and France analyzed skeletons from a grave outside Falköping and found DNA traces of Yersinia pestis, the bacteria that causes plague. The remains belonged to farmers who lived in the area at the time. All strains of plague discovered in later periods, the best known of which is the Black Death, which killed more than 50 million people in the 14th century, are variants of this, the researchers said. The discovery of such an early variant of the plague in Falköping was completely unexpected, as previous findings suggested an origin in Asia. This now needs to be reassessed, so it's a significant discovery, archaeologist Carl-Göran Högren of the University of Gothenburg said in a statement. Pyramid in Antarctica. An image of an Antarctic mountain with a unique pyramid-like shape is suddenly an internet sensation, and countless theorists are puzzling over its origin. Some wonder if an ancient civilization created the rocky, pyramid-shaped structure, and others point to outer space to speculate about alien involvement. But there is a far more mundane cause. Experts say these steep, pyramid-like rocks are likely the work of hundreds of millions of years of erosion. This is just a mountain that looks like a pyramid, said Eric Rigneau, a professor of Earth System Science at the University of California. He believes it's highly unlikely that the pyramid was created by humans. Scientists cannot absolutely explain these forbidden discoveries. Among them are impossible ancient technologies, inexplicable ruins, and mysterious artifacts. There are actually countless out-of-place artifacts throughout history whose existence scientists can't even begin to theorize. They are either too advanced for their dated time of discovery, or science simply doesn't know what purpose they were built for in the first place. Thanks to archaeologists and historians, we sometimes receive a vivid picture of the past. New pieces of the puzzle are constantly being discovered that either expand our understanding, change it, or simply turn it upside down. In this video, we present 10 discoveries that have amazed scientists. The Nazi Gold Train. In 2015, 2 amateur historians in Poland claimed to have found a Nazi train allegedly full of gold using radar. Apparently, this proclamation also fits the local folklore, according to which a train with gold and precious stones disappeared near Fürstenstein Castle at the end of World War II. Some suspect that it was parked in a secret tunnel. According to Polish media, the 2 men wanted 10% as a finder's fee. Marika Tokarska, an official of the district council, said that lawyers, the army, the police, and the fire department were involved at the time. 7 days after excavations began, no tracks, tunnel, or train was ever found. In 2018, one of the 2 historians gave up the search. He said he still believed that the train existed, but excavations had already cost him €80,000, and inaccuracies in the work had frustrated him. His partner, Peter Koper, continues the search to this day. Sperm 100 million years old. In 2020, dozens of perfectly preserved sperm were discovered in the reproductive tract of a female microcrustacean. At 100 million years old, these are the oldest animal sperm ever discovered and date back to the Cretaceous period. This ostracod, called Myanmar cypress hui in Latin, had mated shortly before it was encased in resin. Moreover, the ostracod belongs to a completely new discovered species. Its name derives from the place it was found, Myanmar. Inside the piece of amber was a total of 39 shell crab individuals, of which 31 belonged to this new species, reaching a size of about 0.59 millimeters. Today, there are thousands of species of ostracods, and most of them produce sperm that is much longer than the animal itself. As a result, the breeding process takes quite a long time. Still, the species has prevailed to this day. Leonardo da Vinci's thumbprint. An exciting find for art historians was announced at the beginning of 2019. Thumbprints of the universal genius Leonardo da Vinci have been discovered on his works many times. The newly discovered inky specimen, however, is the clearest print found to date. It's the thumbprint of his left hand, which was also his writing hand. It was discovered on a study of female anatomy dating from about 1509. This work is one of the 144 of his rarely seen works and is owned by the Queen of England as part of the Royal Collection Trust at Windsor Castle. Due to the risk of damage from light, these works can only be displayed temporarily. Mysterious shipwreck. A shipwreck has been found near Warsaw in the Polish part of the Vistula River that experts say could be up to 700 years old. It measures almost 37 meters in length and about 6 meters in width. According to Arta Bruska of the Association of Archaeologists Jutra, it could likely carry up to 100 tons of cargo and dates from the 14th to 18th centuries. Presumably, the cargo consisted of grain and was transported to the Polish city of Gdansk. Remains of a bridge were also discovered in the Vistula River near the village of Łomianki Dolne. This one, however, is more likely to date from the World War II period. Stone Age art. In the Cova de la Font major caves in Catalonia, discovered in 1853, Stone Age cave art with an approximate age of 15,000 years was found in 2019 during a survey, although some may be older. Studying the caves show that they have been used by humans throughout history, making them an archaeological site of great importance. The Stone Age art could indicate a sacred place or a place of worship. It's presumed the site was associated with fertility and was drawn from the fact that mainly female animals were depicted. In addition to animals such as horses and oxen, mysterious abstract symbols were discovered among the 100 or so engravings. The works are among the oldest examples of cave art in the Mediterranean region and are the oldest in all of Catalonia. The engravings are extremely fragile, and some of them have already fallen victim to time or the careless hands of visitors. Now the engraved walls are being copied with a 3D scanner to provide a detailed image of the art for further study and also allow interested parties to visit virtually. Ibis mummies. Between 650 and 250 BC, millions of ibises were sacrificed to the ibis-headed Thoth, the Egyptian god of magic, science, and wisdom. Like lighting candles today, the ibis mummies were meant to remind the god to watch over the people. Because of the large number of sacrifices, it's believed the birds were bred specifically for this purpose. Ancient texts also speak of bird farms. However, a study that determined the genetic diversity of the sacrificed birds revealed that most ibises had been caught in the wild. They may have been kept on bird farms for a short time afterwards. This insight into the techniques of the Egyptians could also explain why the extinction of the sacred ibis had occurred in Egypt. Regardless, archaeologist Francisco Bosch Puche still believes that the Egyptians bred ibis birds. He points to verifiable diseases and healed injuries of the sacrificed animals that resemble those of birds in captivity today. According to him, such birds could not have survived in the wild. Bosch Puche speculates that the food at such farms would have attracted wild ibis birds, making them easy prey and bringing diversity to the group. The fact is that Egypt at the time was a veritable mummy factory whose demand had to be satiated. Since the need was so great, even baby animals were mummified. Bear from the Ice Age. The melting permafrost made it possible for a few reindeer herders to find the immaculately preserved carcass of an Ice Age cave bear on Bolshoi Lakhovsky Island in the early autumn of 2020. The bear's teeth and even nose is still completely intact. Scientists celebrated the radical new find, as only bones of cave bears have been previously discovered. This is the first time a complete cave bear carcass with soft tissue has been found, with its internal organs also still intact. Preliminary research indicated that this specimen lived about 22 to 40,000 years ago, but radiocarbon analysis is pending. Wreck of a Danish warship. The Danish warship Delmenhorst was sunk in 1644 in a sea battle against a Swedish-Dutch fleet by sending it on a collision course with a Swedish vessel. The outcome of the battle had been all but decided and was partly responsible for sealing the end of Danish supremacy in Scandinavia. Only 2 of the 17 Danish ships escaped the Swedes in the battle, and most of the rest were captured. 2 of the 3 ships that sank were already located in 2012. In the spring of 2020, marine archaeologists also succeeded in locating the Delmenhorst. It lay on the seabed at a depth of just over 3 meters near Obdehaven. According to Morten Johansen of the Viking Ship Museum, the ship is not only of interest because it was the last ship to sink in the battle, but also because it's one of the first ships to be shored up from drawings. Tomb of explorer Matthew Flinders. After 200 years, the remains of the first explorer to circumnavigate Australia and give his name to many places on the continent were rediscovered during an HS2 excavation at Euston Station in London. During the excavations, only a fraction of the 40,000 bodies in St. James's Cemetery behind the station were exhumed. So to come across this very skeleton was extraordinarily lucky. After all, until that time, no one knew exactly where Flinders' remains was located. Even when his sister-in-law went to find his grave 38 years after his death in 1814, the exact location was no longer known. Unlike most other coffins, the explorer's nameplate was not made of pewter, but of lead, and thus still legible. Matthew Flinders is hardly a household name to most Britons today. In Australia, however, the discovery of his grave is of great significance. Disco Colgante. The Disco Colgante is now in the Rafael Larco Herrero Archaeological Museum in Lima, the capital of Peru. As can be deduced from the name, the artifact is a circular disc. It was provided with 6 spiral-shaped incisions, and in between them, lines have been engraved 3 times into divided sectors, which follow the same shape of the disc. Unfortunately, since it's made of copper, it cannot be dated. However, it was found in a room together with ceramics from the 16th century, but seems to belong to the Moche culture, which existed from about the 1st to 8th century along the northern coast of Peru. The inaccuracy of the existing sources thus suggests a time of origin from the 1st to the 16th century. The structure and design of the artifact are strongly reminiscent of today's understanding of the location of the solar system within the Milky Way. The Disco Colgante even starts to thicken towards the center, which research has only recently detected in galaxies. The position of the round hole in one of the spirals would also fit approximately to the position of our Sun. In any case, the artifact is quite extraordinary and seems to fall out of any historical frame. With the help of modern technology, it's easy to capture contemporary events in images and sound. In the past, people didn't have access to this technology and had to rely on drawings and sculptures. This is possibly the reason for the often strange discoveries from all epochs of human history, which leave a lot of room for interpretation. Ballyshannon Sun Disk. The sun disk was found in Ballyshannon, Ireland in 1669. The explorers were looking for the grave of a giant buried with golden ornaments, as described in an Irish song. During their search, they came across the sun disk. The find represents the oldest and first evidence of the history of antiquities in Britain and Ireland. The disk, 5.5 centimeters in diameter, was made from a thin piece of gold and shows a cross surrounded by circles at its center. Experts dated the find to the period from 2500 to 2150 BC and stated that sun disks testified to the first form of gold processing in Great Britain and Ireland. Artifacts of this type usually have 2 small holes in the center, and it's conceivable that these were buttons sewn to clothing. The sun disk shown is one of the 2 disks found in Ballyshannon. Both specimens were donated to the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford in 1696. The whereabouts of the second sun disk is unknown. The giant tomb of Codovecchio. Near the town of Arzachena in northern Sardinia is a burial site of the Nuracic culture. It was dated to the Bronze Age and excavated in 1966 by Edita Castaldi. In addition to megaliths and a gallery tomb, there is the giant tomb of Codovecchio, one of the larger burial sites with a total of 321 monuments in Sardinia. Legends speak of spiritual rejuvenation that is said to transpire within the walls of the tombs. Although it's generally agreed that the sites did serve as tombs, little is known about the cultural traditions and rituals. It's unclear whether these monuments served as mass graves and were intended to provide a transition into the afterlife. Since there is much room for interpretation, some voices ascribe a supernatural element to the site. There are researchers and journalists that even claim that the giant tomb of Corduvecchio is a remnant of the lost continent of Atlantis. Babylonian Tablet. The discovery by science historian Matthew Ossendrever of Humboldt University in Berlin sent astronomers around the world into a frenzy. Translating 5 clay tablets unearthed in the 19th century and stored in the British Museum in London since then, Ossendrever was able to prove that astronomers from the 4th to the 1st century BC already had the ability to calculate the trajectory of the planet Jupiter. Ossendrever's work also proves the geometrical calculations by the astronomers of that time. The clay tablets show the daily velocity of Jupiter at different times in its orbit. They used the data obtained on the velocities and times to calculate the distance Jupiter had traveled in the interim. Ossendrever knew that 4 of the 5 clay tablets described such calculations and were related to astronomy. The discovery was remarkable, as this information was previously assumed to have only existed in 14th century Europe, and is an important milestone in unraveling the knowledge of ancient civilizations and cultures. Chest with the Cross of Jesus. Inside the 1,350-year-old Balatla Church in Sinop Province, Turkey, archaeologists found part of the cross of Jesus in a stone chest. The church was once a Roman temple and was converted into a Byzantine place of worship in the 7th century. Experts believe the chest is the symbolic coffin for the relics of a holy person. The artifact found is said to be a fragment of the cross on which Jesus was crucified. In addition to the chest, the cross is also the focus of an investigation, as they are very significant finds for the region. The find is considered sacred in the Christian world, and it's located in a museum in Sinop. The search for the remaining parts of the cross of Jesus is proving to be difficult, as fragments with any connection have been scattered around the world over the past millennia. Lolodov Plate. Besides Egypt, Nepal may also have been visited by extraterrestrials in the past. A witness to the visit of extraterrestrial beings is the 12,000-year-old Lolodov Plate found in Nepal. The decorations of these ancient discs of stone show a disc-shaped UFO and a figure that corresponds to the usual appearance of an extraterrestrial. Typical for the depiction of galaxies is the spiral drawing on the Lolodov Plate. These images are found in India, Egypt, Peru, and other ancient sites on Earth. The creator or creators of this disc likely wanted to tell us with this representation that they came to Earth from a distant galaxy. Another interpretation sees the spiral shape as visualization of energy or infinity. The disc was named after its discoverer, Professor Lolodov, and is said to have been used in the rituals of the mysterious Dzogchen culture. The mysterious figures of the Hongshan culture. The Hongshan culture was a Neolithic civilization in northeastern China between 4700 and 2900 BC. It's best known for its mysterious figurines made of jade. The craftsmanship of the Hongshan culture knew how to work the jade to create some of the most indescribable objects, impossible to reproduce even with today's technology. This raises the unanswered question of the process itself. Researchers describe the Hongshan culture as a civilization that considered jade a sacred stone. This is supported by numerous finds of statues in Hongshan burial sites. Some of the statues have a strange shape and cannot be clearly identified as they don't resemble any life form on our planet. In science, these mythological creatures are referred to as Ouroboros and represent a dragon with the head of a pig. However, this opinion is not held by all, as some of the mysterious figures of Hongshan culture may depict extraterrestrial life forms. They may have been passed down from generation to generation to demonstrate contact with visitors from outer space. Some researchers consider it unlikely that the Hongshan culture could create such detailed figures without having real-life encounters. Roman fingerprints. Archaeologists were amazed when they found a sealed jar 6 centimeters in diameter during excavations at an ancient Roman temple complex in Southwark, London. Inside were the 2,000-year-old remains of an ointment with the fingerprints of its former owner. The vessel shows little signs of decay, and the white paste gives off a scent of sulfur. A popular theory suggests the unique find is a cosmetic cream, which is not usually discovered in such good condition. Another is that the ointment was used as face paint in a ritual ceremony. Researchers hope the presence of the fingerprint will provide clues of the owner's identity and clarify whether the ointment was used by a man or woman or a young boy or girl. The jar is just one of many found in Southwark, but only 2 similar jars have been found in Greater London. The boggy soil around the site ensured the preservation of the tin box and, together with other finds, recalls the former influence of the Romans in the region. The Pyramids of Sona. The Pyramids of Sona consist of 8 mounds located in 2 rows outside the village of Sona in Romania. Sona was founded over 700 years ago by the German colonist Sassi, and there are many mysteries and legends surrounding the village on the Alt River in Transylvania. The 8 mounds of the Sona pyramids are up to 30 meters high and line up in 2 rows according to size. The locals call them Gururieti and believe that the pyramids were built by giants because they stand out from the landscape. According to a legend, Princess Sona ruled the land many years ago. One day, giants coming over the Fagara Mountains invaded her kingdom. As the giants crossed the Alt River, a lot of mud stuck to their feet, which they shook off, creating the Pyramids of Sona. Another legend from the time of the Dacian tribes tells of riches that are said to be buried inside the hills. Historians see the Pyramids of Sona as tombs of Celtic barbarians. Mother Shipton's Cave. Mother Shipton, whose civil name was Ursula Sothiel or Sonthiel, was a fortune teller born in Knaresborough, England in 1488 and believed to have died in 1561. Throughout her life, she gained notoriety through fortune-telling and prophetic verses, which were published 80 years after her death in the biography entitled The Life and Death of Mother Shipton by Richard Head. According to the book, Mother Shipton was said to have been born in a cave in Knaresborough in Yorkshire, which is aptly named Mother Shipton's Cave. The book contains divinations about the plague and the Great Fire of London. Thor's Hammer. An artifact in the form of a 10th century hammer was found on the Danish island of Lolland. The artistic decoration suggests that it's a depiction of Thor's hammer. The object was cast in bronze and has traces of silver plating, pewter and gold. Vikings believed in the protective power of their gods and carried these objects on their travels religiously. Doubts still arise as to whether this artifact symbolizes Thor's hammer, as the handle is too short. So far, its origin is unclear. Quite often, after discoveries are made, stories and legends come to the surface, which tend to obscure rational explanations. Perhaps you have your own interpretation on the discoveries shared in this video. Please share your thoughts in the comments below.